Want to know what's really important when it comes to a story? Logic. Things have to make sense. If I tell you a tale about a goat who has superpowers, but when you ask how they got said powers, I just say maths, you're not going to buy it. It doesn't mean anything. I would assume I didn't have a reason, so just ignored that part. It never works. It's the same with wrestling, and arguably even more integral to the fans because you get content each and every week. With that amount of product, it's so easy to fall off the rails because the audience is watching and never given a break. If a wrestler is there one week and then vanishes and nobody mentions it, you can bet your ass somebody sat at home is screaming at the TV asking what's going to happen. Imagine the TV responded too. That would be illogical. Let's try and get some closure with all this though by talking about it, because I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 WWE storylines let down by stupid logic. Number 10, the Brawl for All. This will hurt your brain. In case you don't know, the Brawl for All was a WWE tournament in the late 90s that was presented as real fighting like it was the UFC. Everyone built it up as if the audience was about to see wrestlers actually having a scrap, but by proxy, that meant those not in it were having fake fights. And sure, nobody ever said that out loud, but it was the number one question, because of course it was. It means in June of 1998, when we saw Steve Blackman take on Mark Merrow in the Brawl for All, that was pitched as a shoot, whereas Kane versus Steve Austin for the WWF title was pitched as a pile of nonsense. The company were basically slapping themselves in the face and saying that if you weren't participating in the series, you were play fighting. The real confusion came in the fact that whoever won this was meant to actually face Stone Cold for that title, and don't give it any more thought, your head deserves a break. Number 9, Shane McMahon runs Raw. When Shane O'Mac returned to Raw in 2016, it was a big deal. Nobody saw it coming, apart from me, who did actually jokingly predict it on a podcast the week before, and the reaction he received was mad. If you haven't seen it, you should. It's really fun. The idea was to set up Shane versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 32 with quite the serious stipulation. With the younger McMahon promising some magical secret in a lockbox, Vince decided that if his son could win at the show of shows, he could run Raw, but if he lost, this potentially devastating reveal had to be thrown away forever. It was kind of intriguing. And then Shane lost, ran Raw anyway, and the lockbox was never mentioned again. Even worse, on the After the Bell podcast, Shane O said that this was never meant to be a major part of the angle anyway, so why even bother? Trying to explain this to anyone was basically impossible, and that sums it up. It would have been far easier if we had just gone, alright Shane, here, run Raw. Just don't take it underground. Number 8, Vince McMahon is the higher power. Now this did give us that amazing moment when Vince McMahon threw back the hood on his cloak to shout, "It was me, Austin! It was me all along!" The issue, however, was that it was utterly ludicrous that it would have been him, other than the fact nobody would have guessed it. The reason for that, however, is because it didn't tie into the story. In 1999, WWE were trying to keep the Austin-McMahon feud going, so actually came up with a plotline where Vince was somewhat sympathetic. The Undertaker had kidnapped his daughter Stephanie and basically started to make his life a living hell, including threatening to kill his family. So Vinny had every right to be upset. It was Stone Cold that actually saved her in the end, to which McMahon was super grateful, except he wasn't. Why? Because it turned out he had decided to make all this happen, even though it was his own flipping clan who would have suffered. The justification was meant to be he hated the Rattlesnake so much he was willing to do anything, but he could have achieved all of that without putting his own family in danger. It was literally done because no one would see it coming, even though it left fans everywhere scratching their heads. Number 7, the two-man power trip. I love the two-man power trip, but mostly because I was a child and really enjoyed Stone Cold and Triple H. I mean, I liked weird flashy things on the TV back then, what did I know? It did mean when they got together I was a bit like, sweet. However, if you remember the narrative at the time, this was Steve Austin deciding to team with the game in 2001, even though Hunter had tried to kill him 2 years prior. Yep, Triple H was behind the organised car that ran over Austin, which made the bionic redneck so mad, it ended with a 3 stages of hell match where the two brutalised each other. Austin would say this was because he would rather be with a guy who was so nuts than against him, but that wasn't true, because he'd already been on the other side. It was all because Stone Cold was now a bad guy and Triple H wasn't ready to go full-on good guy, so this was our compromise. They had some great matches, and again there was a cool factor to it, but logically, out the window. Number 6, Shane McMahon finds Kevin Owens $100,000. When Kevin Owens put his hands on guest referee Elias at SummerSlam 2019, SmackDown General Manager Shane McMahon fined him $100,000. There were a couple of problems here. The first was many wrestlers touch officials during matches and no one cares, but also Owens was booked to be terrified about all this as if he couldn't afford it. Now, $100,000 is a hell of a lot of money, but KO had won the Universal title, headline pay-per-views, been a WWE superstar for years. There was no way that fine was high enough for Kevin to sacrifice his morals and say sorry to Shane McMahon. It made him look like an idiot. In short, the cash amount should have been a lot more that made fans go, oh crap, that may actually ruin his future and family. A bit like that scene in Austin Powers where Dr. Evil wants to go after $1 million before being told that was basically chump change in the modern day. It was the same here. Number 5, Shawn Michaels needs JBL'S cash. Following on from that was this doozy which took the idea and made it even more silly. In late 2008, we were informed that Shawn Michaels had been a multi-millionaire, but lost all his cash because of the ongoing recession. As such, he now had to work for JBL, who of course was still loaded. It ended with an all-or-nothing match at No Way Out 2009 where HBK freed himself of this, and it led into that awesome clash with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. Still not sure where Michaels managed to sort his financial situation, so we'll go with magic. It was also hard to suspend your disbelief into believing that Shawn was totally skint to the point he would have to go quasi-heel and team up with Bradshaw. Something different, sure, but it didn't add up. It's kind of ironic. Number 4, DDP stalks The Undertaker's wife. When WCW died in 2001, WWE had the cool opportunity to bring in their top stars however they wanted. So Booker T came in as Booker T, which worked, whereas DDP for some reason was now a creepy stalker who wanted to follow The Undertaker's wife around. I do not know. It seems as if Paige wanted to become famous and thought this was the way to do it, but he was already famous. Everyone knew who DDP was, which was proved when he unmasked on Raw to a crazy ovation. People were delighted to see him because of course they were. It was Diamond Dallas Page. It was also horrible to watch as we had footage of these stalking sessions, and most of the audience also knew that DDP was married to WCW's Kimberly, so none of this worked. Fun fact for you though, because if you do watch these skits now, the disguised voice was done by none other than Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Number 3, Rikishi does it for The Rock. When Rikishi said these fateful words after it was revealed he was the guy driving the car from the hit and run with Stone Cold Steve Austin we talked about earlier, he officially became a wrestling meme. Saying that he did it for the Great One because he had always been overlooked based on his Samoan heritage would have been fine, but it was the flippin' Rock who not only was the world champion, but the second biggest star in the company. Rikishi may have had some merit to his words, but not when he included the People's Champ, who had also won the top prize in the game 5 times by this point. A few months after, he was going to become a 6-time champ too. Just to make it even worse, it was Triple H who nabbed the top spot based on this and not Rikishi, which meant none of this made any sense anyway and left the quiche reeling. Also, The Rock hated the fact he had done this. It was so dumb. Number 2, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon were a team all along. Let's not pretend this wasn't a great moment. It was. When Stephanie McMahon turned on her dad at Armageddon 1999 and gave Triple H a big hug, it had fans everywhere talking. It also had some sense to it because it was Steph getting revenge on her dad for all that higher power stuff. Yeah, I'd be pretty mad as well when you get into all the other details that it hurts your brain again. According to the story though, Stephanie McMahon fell in love with Tess before the game got involved. Triple H then drugged and married her against her will, which obviously caused massive issues with the current boyfriend. Vince then vowed to sort this out in a bloody pay-per-view match at the pay-per-view when all is revealed. So you are telling me that Triple H and Steph sat down and came up with all of this, including some fake drug wedding, just so that McMahon Sr. would be even more shocked than, you know, just teaming with the enemy to begin with. Okay. I do love how mad wrestling can be though. So in that sense, it's fine. Number 1, Retribution wants to destroy WWE. I mean, I don't know. The whole point of Retribution is that they're meant to be here to stop the biggest wrestling company in the world, and yet not only did they sign contracts to become employed by them, but also agreed to be drafted. I mean, what? They've also done nothing of note other than turn the lights on and off. And what even is the beef these days? They wanted to be paid well and have an opportunity, and I guess they've got all of that. You see them on most cards these days, they're well promoted. If anything, this was basically a well-executed business arrangement. In short, the whole thing doesn't make any sense right down to those masks. They want to hide their identities, I suppose, but everybody knows who they are anyway. It's not their fault, they're just doing what they've been told. But it is not good. Know of any other WWE storylines let down by stupid logic? And I know you do. Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles. Follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE, and watch more videos here on What Culture Wrestling. My name is Simon from What Culture. I do appreciate your time today, and I will talk to you again very soon.